Urgent. My sister's YouTube channel at Renawatif has been hacked. Please be aware of any strange or unusual content posted on her channel as it is no longer under her control. We urge you to subscribe to her new channel, Rena Fiction, to avoid any confusion or misinformation. Thank you for your understanding and support during this difficult time. Hello to all lovers of lemon scenes. I invite you all to my boosty so you can watch your favorite Naruto What If stories in complete comfort. A subscription to Naruto Lemon costs $1.04. The first video with a full lemon is already on my boosty channel. Dare! Sasuke-kun. To disgust, a nasty squeaky voice, like a knife butter, cut the blissful silence on the training ground of the Shinobi Academy, forcing an inner grimace of disgust. Not that, the owner of long black hair and the same black eyes sighed inaudibly to others, which made him look very much like a raven. Although the boy was more flattered when he was compared to Tengu, one of the most dangerous and strongest yokai in the mythology of this world. Be strong, Sasuke, you've endured more than that. And remember that there is nowhere to hide the corpses anymore. Don't touch Sasuke-kun, big-headed. Another nasty voice, to the point of teeth grinding, hit the eardrums not only of the mentioned boy, but also of all the students and teachers who were nearby. Oh, no, there are two of them, the boy whispered resignedly. And where these two are, there's the whole fan club named after me. No, the corpses really have nowhere to hide anymore. Okay, I tried to save this trump card for later, for 2 years, but apparently there is no choice. Meanwhile, while the black-haired boy was hastily thinking what to do, monsters in the guise of cute little girls were approaching him at great speed, of which there were already almost a dozen, and this figure continued to increase as they approached. The reason for such a stir was simple: Uchiha Sasuke, the heir of the great clan of the founders of Konoha, a genius, millionaire, philanthropist and just the first guy in the village capable of tying an experienced genin in his 10 years. In general, the popularity of this eternally gloomy and unsociable boy, who, according to other girls and girls from 8 to 14, was surrounded by an aura of mystery and aristocracy, reached the heavens. Which, however, did not give him absolutely no bonuses in life, except for excessive attention from some windy young fools. And all it was necessary to remain the only representative of the once huge clan of owners of the strongest dojutsu in the world. A mere trifle. Just think, the elder sister cut out your entire clan in front of your eyes and cut off the heads of your mother and father, and then for several weeks plunged you into the strongest illusion that only the owners of the highest form of clan dojutsu are available, where you experience day after day in the smallest details the destruction of your relatives, friends, and just acquaintances. What kind of bullshit? Sasuke has been dabbling in this since childhood. Well, completely gray hair, which, by the way, he paints, a few phobias and a shattered psyche in the trash. This is so, a nice bonus to a high-quality 5D movie. In general, nothing is ordinary, any fool can also. Stop. Holding out his hand with an open palm in the direction of the girls rushing at him, he shouted softly. And to his surprise, they listened to him and immediately stopped. A couple of questions. So you all like me? Yes. In response, he received friendly furious nods from each of the girls. And each of you wants to be my wife in the future? Yes. They nodded even more furiously. I see. Then I should tell you all something. I am a crazy pervert with a huge older sister complex, dragging along Itachi and only Itachi. I read diaries belonging to Itachi. Every day before going to bed I tease Itachi. Especially I like to fantasize in the style of Jonin Kanohi Kata Weekend, but very cunning and seductive Nukaninchu, naturally with Itachi in the title role. I collect hentai figures only with Itachi. Yes, what a sin to conceal. I often dress up as Itachi myself. I'm even wearing stockings under my pants now, which Itachi used to wear, the boy said with the most honest look in one go, while not a single muscle trembled on his face from such a speech. As soon as the last word flew out of the mouth of the last Uchiha, the deathly silence that had been established in the middle of his monologue acquired physical pressure on everyone who could hear him. But nevertheless, the boy achieved his goal. A flock of girls abruptly acquired a surprisingly identical beetroot complexion, with the same shocked expression of these very faces. However, not only the girls could boast of this, but all the boys had the same symptoms: a red face, bulging eyes, as well as an opening and closing mouth, like a fish that was thrown ashore. It was the best dynamo in my life, the quiet voice of one of the chunins who came to watch the training of the kids in his spare time cut through the ringing silence. Yeah, a genius, definitely, the second spectator, sitting on a tree branch a meter higher, supported the first. Have you recorded it? A third voice asked. You offend. The first and second answered him in chorus. Any other requests? The young Uchiha asked a group of girls who were slowly but surely moving away from him. No. They shouted in unison and rushed away to the other end of the training ground. That's fine. The dyed brunette grinned with satisfaction and went on to practice throwing shurikens at the target, until the taijutsu teacher announced his turn for sparring when he came home after classes at the academy, although it is worth noting that Uchiha preferred to go only to some lessons, like taijutsu, geopolitics, geography, psychology, elementary economics courses and other useful classes in the future. At the same time, he shamelessly skipped all classes that were unnecessary in his opinion, such as calligraphy, chakra theory, and initial ninjutsu courses. Still, such knowledge in his clan accumulated for 10 such academies, and this is only in an open library, and there were also hidden libraries of each family within the Uchiha clan and just one common secret repository. And of course he knew how to get into both the secret and the family vault, with not only the families of the former head of the clan, his father, but also several other influential families. And all thanks to his beloved older sister Itachi, who showed him many different secrets of the clan. Itachi showed Sasuke a lot of things in general, and to be honest, it was Itachi who cared about him more than his father and mother combined. That's why Sasuke had very strong and not at all brotherly feelings for his sister, even though she had done something stupid. No, of course, the destruction of the entire clan is bad. Sasuke won't argue here, only Itachi was more important to him. And in the future, he will somehow cope with the fact that he is the last official Uchiha belonging to Konoha. And Itachi will take a direct part in this. Yes, you need to be responsible for your actions, and her smart little brother has long decided exactly how he will punish his stupid older sister. And he will punish her for a long time and often, with all the famous Uchikovsky fiction. Glancing at the photo where he is in the arms of a smiling and obviously happy sister, Sasuke, out of habit, wished her good luck and, turning around, went to the kitchen. Where, as usual, I had to cook something, trying to cook something less dangerous than a nerve poison, which is called miso soup only by misunderstanding. One restless, with an all-in-one place, a blonde about 10 years old. The only blonde in all of Konoha who does not cause him a nervous tic, and the second female representative after Itachi, which is pleasant to his eyes. Are you skipping again? He asked perhaps the most frequent question, what sounds in the kitchen of his house, boy? You know, Sasuke, the blonde with 3 pigment stripes on each cheek began to justify herself. You show up there at least once a week, otherwise Irika-sensei, although he has a huge reserve of patience, but he is not infinite. Okay? Without listening to her next attempt to come up with a plausible excuse, the boy said. Hi, Sasuke. The girl responded, but without much enthusiasm. And the boy could understand her, because with such a hyperactive character, sitting quietly in one place for at least an hour was a real feat for her. In addition, Sasuke himself was already engaged with her outside the academy, and therefore the girl's level of knowledge, if not higher than that of her peers at the academy, then exactly at their level. Okay, show me already what you have once again transferred our products to. He waved his hand at this. Hey! The girl exclaimed indignantly. I cook well, Databe. Yes, it's good to poison half of Konoha to death, Sasuke. She exclaimed indignantly, but despite everything, she put a tray with 5 small dishes on a low table in front of the boy. I hope I like it this time, the boy sighed with hope in his voice and, pulling the garbage bag closer to him, stretched out his chopsticks to the first plate. And grabbing a small piece of food in one quick movement, he sent it into his mouth and, without chewing, swallowed it just as quickly. Bew! After a few seconds, the boy bent over the garbage bag. This is clearly a marriage, although not as good as it should be, but better than last time, he said firmly, wiping the edges of his mouth with a napkin and at the same time looking at the girl, crimson with embarrassment. But for the efforts plus, I tried, the girl said in disappointment, so much work and all for nothing. Don't worry, everything comes with experience, besides, I can safely say that every time your cooking is more and more edible, really? She immediately shone, as soon as the boy restored her faith in herself. True, he nodded in agreement. There are 4 more to go. Well, let's get started. Half an hour later, or after 4 plates of different dishes and a roll of toilet paper, the dyed brunette finally left the toilet room. And he was ready to make his verdict, so, I can congratulate you, 1 excellent, 2 edible, 1 inedible and 1 biological weapon of mass destruction. And this is 1 less inedible than last time. Yes, Databe. I'm cool as a Hokage. Yes, I'm even cooler than Hokage and I will definitely become Hokage in the future. The girl rejoiced with a radiant smile at all 32. Yes, of course you will. I saw the future, you were the 7th Hokage there, true, you were not her, but these are trifles, we do not have a canon, but a full-fledged non-canon, true without Hiruzangad, but with a Danzogad, but whatever. If he said the first part of the last phrase in a voice, then muttered the next one under his breath so that only he and him could hear it succeeded. The girl paid attention only to the first words, and everything else passed by. The 7th? And why not the 5th? And who was the 6th? She immediately expressed her curiosity, as she was used to the fact that sometimes her best friend could predict the future. And as she thought, it was thanks to some super-duper just incredibly cool and secret technique of his clan. The 5th was Tsunade Senju, an S-class Ironin, princess of the Senju clan and Sennin slugs. And the 6th was one ever-late shinobi, Kakashi Hatake. And yes, they were cool. But you were cooler. Oh yes, I'm the coolest, Databe, yeah, and to become even cooler, you need to train a lot. So take your training suit and move to the training ground, I'll be there in 5 minutes, hurrah. Training. Sasuke, are you going to show me some cool technique today? With hope in her voice, she asked the boy, while putting on the most touching expression on her face. Bang! The edge of the boy's palm didn't come down too hard on her forehead. What did I say about kawaii no jutsu? He arched an eyebrow in question. That it's a super strong and super forbidden technique that can't be used on friends, she replied submissively, hanging her head. And I didn't do it on purpose, Databe. Well, that's how I believed it. Okay, you'll have a cool technique. Hurrah! That's it, I ran, the girl said and disappeared like an orange lightning into another room. That's a juvenile monster, or that Hashirama with Madara. Give her a few B-rank techniques and she'll even whip up Kagyu. The boy shook his head kindly. Yeah, I feel like a complete nonentity against her background, even with 2 Tomo Sharingan. That's who the real genius is. With these words, grinning at his reflection in the mirror, the dyed brunette went to his room. It was necessary to mentally prepare for the fact that he, called by others the genius of his generation, would be rolled in the dust by one blonde with 2 ponytails on her head and a nuclear reactor in her stomach. Although Sasuke himself sometimes suspected that the reactor was still in the ass. The share of the last Uchiha is heavy. Well, nothing, he will definitely take revenge for all his torments on his stupid older sister. Oh yes, she will beg him to stop, but he will continue to torment her, time after time, day and night on the fly. Oh yeah, sweet revenge, lying on the bed after a grueling workout, I could only breathe heavily, and then with great difficulty. Any movement, a sigh, and even a thought, gave pain. The whole body was one solid high-quality chop. Yeah, once again I'm convinced that Naruko is a monster, in the guise of a cute girl. She once again wiped every pebble, every blade of grass, every speck of dust on the landfill with me. Again lowering my cherished sense of self-importance for years to the lower levels of hell, because the level below the baseboard is too shallow and frivolous for her, so to speak, a long past stage. Why do I even call this blondie a monster? Yes, because it is. And don't shake your head in disbelief, you just don't know her TTX, but I do, and I feel great every day. No, of course, I am also a proud adept of the way of marries, but Naruko is beyond good and evil, and my Sharingan looks extremely pale against the background of her buns. I will give simple comparisons. My chakra volume is equal to the usual chunin in my 10, it's 10 small fireballs filled to the maximum, or the dragon's breath for 20 meters lasting 10 seconds. But Naruko has a reserve of chakra in her 10-20 times more than mine, approximately. It's difficult to count correctly there, but she can give out 8 minutes of bright flame for 15 meters from her mouth without straining herself too much. Uzumaki, what else can I say? But this is just the beginning. What else were Uzumaki famous for besides Fuin and a huge, simply monstrous supply of chakra? Right. You butt in stew. This girl doubles the pace where I begin to show the first signs of fatigue, and triples where I'm already lying down, and she still has enough time after that for the same amount of time as before. In general, there are 2 conclusions. The first, I am a bony drch next to her, and the second, her husband will be very unlucky, he will strike to death. This was the second argument in her favor, but there is a third. Spontaneous affinity. For me, like for all Uchiha, the main element is still fire. While recently I was able to understand the principle of how to master lightning, but I have not yet reached beyond small sparks after 2 hours of active dancing with a tambourine. But we can safely say that I have 2 elements, fire and lightning. I'm thinking of awakening the third one as well, but the earlier, the easier it is to master in the future. But the small blonde does not think. She has already mastered the 3 elements, albeit at a minimum level. The air is native and most pronounced, the fire got to her most likely from Kyuubi, and the lightning passed to her from her mother and father, since the first one had its secondary, and the second one had the main one. And the most important thing that awakens black envy in me is that she studies her secondary ones with half a kick at times faster than me. I said about the chakra, about endurance, too. I remembered the elements, the tendency to fuin by default. I probably shouldn't have taught her how to draw smoke and explosion seals. As it turned out, Naruko has a very unhealthy fantasy and remembers all the insults well. So, what have I forgotten? Remembered. Phenomenal learning ability, where I spend a few days, a dozen hours is enough for her. And sometimes the saying comes to the tongue. The law is not written for fools, because only she can do it first, and then look at me in bewilderment when I bang my head against a tree from another violation of the laws of physics and logic. By all the canons, what she does is impossible in principle. So I feel like I'm not a genius next to her, but a complete downer. The only thing that still saves me is her inability to focus on one thing for too long, her general hyperactivity and just terrible chakra control. In this I surpass her. Oh, yes, also a general level of knowledge and more or less adult thinking. And to be honest, looking at how she regularly skips classes at the academy, I sigh with relief, because publicly lowering me into the mud is again postponed indefinitely. Yes, here many would immediately object, you have cheater eyes. And all that. To which I can safely answer that the active use of these very eyes eats a lot of chakra. After that, we look at point 1 and all questions disappear by themselves. This is not even considering that to awaken each new level of Sharingan, you need a pretty emotional intensity and a shift of brains to a new place, because in the past the lease expired. And a full-fledged Sharingan, not to mention a Mangek, has a constant influence on the emotional background of its owner, and to put it quite simply, it sharpens the roof not in a childish way. Therefore, phobias, manias, hiccups and quirks are quite normal for all Sharingan owners, even those to whom it was transplanted. You don't need to go far for an example. Let's take me in person. Instead of being angry, quietly hating and wanting to strangle my sister in the Parash for leaving me an orphan, cutting out the whole clan in general, and arranging a 3-week movie marathon with full immersion, I want to fuck her. A very logical, and most importantly, a reasonable reaction towards her own sister. And most importantly, I understand that I went a little crazy. Okay, my roof is full of holes and flows mercilessly, but nevertheless it suits me. That's it. And I even know why. The whole point is that Itachi has always served as the focus of awakening a new level of my eyes. My first Tomo woke up at 8 after I died a little bit for a few seconds during the fireball training. And after opening my eyes with one Tomo, the first one who caught my eye was my sister, who actively pulled me out of the other world, and pulled me out after all, even if not to the end. Well, the awakening of the second comma on a red background also happened thanks to Itachi. Yeah, she got an original birthday present, I would even say a double one, yeah. No one has ever sent hundreds of people to the other world on my birthday in front of my eyes. Originality, fuck. But the second stage of Sharingan is already 10 years old, and it's expensive. Although yes, it was possible to give all 3 tomos for this, but apparently up there, the higher forces decided that such stories were no longer new and generally mainstream, and therefore 2 would be enough. Well, I thought about the injustice of the world. He complained about his fate, told about himself and in general, opened part of the background, and therefore with an honest conscience, which is not there, by the way, you can close your eyes and fall asleep. Tomorrow is a day off, what a blessing, flashback. The first entry. I've never kept a diary and I don't know how it's done at all, but the clan's birthday recommended starting, after all, the awakening of Sharingan at the age of 8 and all that. In general, it is useful for mental health. Therefore, let's go, dear diary. A month ago I awakened Sharingan, and there is one less Uchiha in the world, a lover of staring at the ass of someone else's older sister. 0.0001 seconds is too long. Rest in peace, Uchiha Shursui. Joke. Or maybe not. Okay, it really was a joke, well, the second half for sure. Although, if Shursui tries to ask my sister to date him again, then there really will be one less Shursui in the world. Itachi is only mine. Yes. No one has the right to take her virginity before me. Well, nothing, another 6 or 8 years and everything will be fine. My sister needs to be patient just a little. And I will somehow make sure that no one picks her flower before me. Yeah. And this is probably what the doctors told me about, my first mental deviation. Well, the older sister complex with such an older sister is not at all surprising. And after she even more intensified her supervision of me from her side. In general, everything is within the norm, of course, would like to know where these limits end yet. But it needs to be carefully considered. After I spend tonight with my sister at the training ground. Me and her, alone, no one else. I wonder if this can be considered a date. Yeah, I have real problems. I do not know what to wear on my first date and what flowers Itachi likes. Well, yes, there are problems with the head too. Record number, I don't count my records, 98. Today in Konoha there was a celebration of something there related to fire. It would be surprising if it were otherwise in the land of fire, but I, as usual, listened. Okay, I just stupidly went into a trance again, watching my sister's third-size breasts sway during her next workout, and how her sweat-soaked t-shirt fits them. Lovely. I wonder if my sister reads my notes? If so, then no Itachi, your breasts are beautiful, and your ass is even better. 11 swaying Sasuke out of 10. Entry number, do I have to count, 2? Confused face, 102 plus 1 equals 103, after all, Itachi reads, or rather has already read my notes. And how did she not burn my diary after reading the first entry? Maybe it's because my feelings are mutual? Itachi, answer me, don't torture your little brother. Incest is so exciting. Entry number, it hurts me too much to count, Kaka, 104, diary, do you think bruises and minor wounds after training with Itachi are yes or still no? I also think it's a cross between I'll strangle, I'll think about it, and someone killed a possible guy again. And by the way, sister, what do you find in this gasping Yasuo when you have such a beautiful me? And it's good that he died on a mission, you don't have to get your hands dirty. Entry number, to hell with these numbers, algebra was invented by the devil. 112-inch Itachi kissed me. Kissed. Patselovila. On the cheek, really, but it's bullshit, it all starts small. First the cheek, then the lips, then the hickey, followed by more open harassment, and at the end an lemon yu. Entry number 113-inch next time, remind yourself not to write down your plans for the conquest of the world, the coup in Konoha and the seduction of Itachi in this diary, but to write everything in a secret diary. My poor ass, entry number, to hell with this stuff, 114, Itachi, give me back my secret diary. I have all the most important documents there, for example, your photos of the 18+ category. And in general, by your actions you undermine my entire schedule of your seduction. How do I know what the next step is if I don't have a detailed plan in hand? It's good that I have a secret diary version too, there are duplicates of all my plans. Entry number, I really lost count, +1, today was another holiday. This time I was even released to Konoha, though under escort, but with my sister's escort, now it was a date anyway. That's just the two of us couldn't stay together for a long time, in the next thickets, into which I climbed in search of ephemeral candidates for the place of my sister's future boyfriend, and at the same time another corpse in my secret refrigerator. In short, there in the bushes I found something I didn't expect to find, a cute blonde girl. And I stupidly couldn't pass by, she was too cute and my Mimi meter broke down to Biju. I love everything cute, but Itachi is stronger, so don't be jealous, sister. From that moment there were 3 of us, me, Itachi and a girl with stripes on her cheeks in the form of a mustache named Naruko, and she turned out to be as crazy on her head as me. Or is it just that she has a huge awl in her ass? I don't know for sure, but she's surprisingly fun. And what was she doing alone in the bushes? And why did I see just a huge hope in Itachi's eyes when she looked at this blonde? And how many plates of ramen can fit into it? And so, there are too many questions and too few answers, as one great man said, I'll think about it later. P.S. Itachi in yukata looks just magical. P.S. I took a photo for myself, where she is with a lollipop in her mouth. P.S.S.S. I'm not vulgar, the present tense, well, that's why I remembered all this. Pararamparam, I mentally whistled in my head, diligently holding my face like a brick in the real world. A brick that has been terribly constipated for a week now. Well, and, of course, the atmosphere, I am D'Artagnan, you are shit, has not gone away. I studiously ignored all the envious glances at my beloved from the side of particularly persistent and alternatively gifted personalities of the female half of our class of underage murderers, in which it was read in large print, "What about me?" But the brick face was doing its job. But Naruko, sitting next to her, could not boast of being pumped up to the 81st level of indifference and therefore looked like a bright red light bulb. Well, the looks at her were the complete opposite of those thrown at me, so few experienced shinobi can give out such a huge thirst for blood. Even the teachers who came to our classroom today abruptly changed their color to a whiter one and abruptly became very cautious and polite. And that made her even more uncomfortable. She was spinning in her seat, twitching nervously, and in general was far from even her own standard of calmness. But with all this, she avoids even indirect glances at me, not to mention direct ones. Just think, she bumped into me at the exit from the audience, well, fell on me, well, accidentally kissed me, what's wrong with that? So no, embarrassment is rushing from all the cracks. But this useless emotion should have died a long time ago, writhing in great agony thanks to me, but no, as it turned out, she is more alive than all the living. Don't flicker, I already have a headache from this. Sit still, grabbing her by the top of her head with my left hand and pressing her into the bench so that she finally froze for a moment, I sternly commanded, and to heighten the effect, I pinned her down with my trademark oppressive gaze with an activated Sharingan. "NIC. Yes, Sasuke NI-san." She immediately blurted out, rather more out of habit, calling me NII again. And after all, I asked not to call myself that, but no, this blonde as soon as she found out that I was her foster brother, since then she has started such an outrage. I should have burned my childhood photos, there's too much compromising material. That's just in vain, it's going to start now, Ni-san. What kind of biju does this blonde call Sasuke-kun brother? One of the most dangerous fans with two pink hair color immediately shouted indignantly. That was what needed to be proved. I hate pink hair. On her stake, burn the heretic. Tear it to pieces, well, shut up everyone. Even Iruka's titanium nerves could not stand the madhouse going on, and he showed that it was not for nothing that he passed the Tokubetsu Jonin exam a year ago, crushing all the young fools with the pressure of his ki. Well, a couple of genjutsu does not count. Tishina. Thanks, bro, you saved my brain. Once again. Yes, among all the teachers of the academy, only Iruka went beyond sympathetic glances in my direction and periodically drove away from me these fucked up even more than I was youngsters. Although, I suspect here that he was just afraid that I would not stand it and help evolution with its natural selection of all kinds of defective ones. And therefore, at the moments of the greatest heat, I lowered the degree of my thirst for red liquid of specific representatives of society. No, children, of course, are the flowers of life and in general, our future, but only children, not these mistakes of nature. That's better, Iruka nodded with satisfaction, circling the silent instigators of the disorder with a menacing look, which, however, immediately softened sharply. So, as you might have guessed for yourself or learned from the inquiries of your older comrades that you have already become full-fledged genins, today is your last day at the Shinobi Academy. I can't help but say that I am proud of you. Moreover, I am proud to say that I am sincerely glad for each of you. I am proud of each of you no matter what. Naruko got a particularly long look here, but she once again missed such a subtle hint by herself. And I also hope that in the future you will become worthy shinobi of our village and I will hear about your differences more than once. Well, now, let me announce who and what team I got into. After all, the jonin standing outside the door are already exhausted from waiting, just like you. Iruka finished his speech and took a white sheet out of the folder in his hands, began to read out the first line from a short list, only 15 positions. Team number 1, he began, and immediately a man of about 28 with an oblique scar on his temple walked in the door. Apparently it was their mentor, and when the next command is announced, a new jonin will enter the door. I was not interested in who and where I got to. Firstly, I am interested in absolutely other questions, and secondly, I will meet with them again in the future, so this information was not in demand for me. Yeah, okay, who am I messing with? I stupidly didn't care about any extras. I remembered enough bright personalities, and the extras were enough for the extras to be cut out by the first henchman of the main villain. Team number 7, Sasuke Uchiha. The hall held its breath, and the girls not yet distributed folded their fingers with a cross. Naruko Uzumaki, bloodlust filled the room again. Sakura Haruno, yeah. Crack. The pink-haired woman's triumphant cry and my forehead hitting the countertop, which could not stand it and was covered with cracks, merged into one sound. For what, Kami? Where did I screw up so much that you're taking revenge on me for it? I muttered softly. The mentor is Jonin Kakashi Hatake. Yes, I'm sorry, it will be difficult for you in the future, Iruka sincerely sympathized. Team number 8, Hinata Hyuga. Under the slightly worried gaze of the blonde sitting next to me, I tore my forehead off the already unusable surface of the desk, showing with a glance that everything was fine with me, and assumed my usual position in the style of swallowed a crowbar. Iruka-sensei, can I come out? Okay, since the canon takes its toll, no matter how hard I try, then I need to compensate for it somehow, for example, with the help of dango. I will need a lot of dangos. However, I have a lot of time. Kakashi, after all, is something wrong? He looked at me. Does team number 7 have to sit here, waiting for their mentor, who, as I see, is not here, or can we expect him anywhere else? In principle, you don't have to sit in this classroom, but at the same time it is forbidden to leave the territory of the academy building before meeting your new teacher. Okay. Thank you, Iruka-sensei, I nodded, getting up from my seat. But it's still better not to wander for a long time, Sensei added when I was already at the door. So Kakashi, I waved away, it's true. Naruko immediately followed me, followed by a pink-haired monster, an adamantine forehead and a -1 board in one bottle, or Haruno Sakura, to put it simply. Okay, maybe I'm overly biased towards the girl, yet she is a good person, despite her shortcomings. I would even say kind. That's just with the mere memory of her. Seiya Asukuwan. Immediately the switch in my mind switches itself to the Berserk Ripper light version mode. In general, I am not against her company in principle, but only on the condition that she will be a couple of kilometers away from me, bound and gagged. Sasuke nii, Iruka-sensei said not to leave the academy. Naruko exclaimed as I walked straight to the exit from the Shinobi Academy. Dango, I answered monosyllabically, knowing full well that Naruko would understand the whole meaning of my answer. She had studied me too well not to understand. But Sasuke nii. It's her turn today. Naruko shuddered internally and externally at the memory of a woman who frightened her to the point of trembling, and also incredibly irritated her, as well as made her envious. The very drop, just a little. I have stress, continuing to stubbornly walk along the streets of Konoha, and not the territory of the educational institution. I waved away her attempt to appeal to the voice of reason. But she will definitely be there. The girl exclaimed in a little panic and, clutching my hand, tried to stop me, and then drag me in the opposite direction. But I have already set myself a goal and am not used to paying attention to obstacles on the way to it. In addition, the coveted best dango store in Konoha was a miserable 100 meters away. No valwell et, I answered syllabically, overpowering Naruko's grip with each subsequent step forward. Ike! Naruko exclaimed when she saw something ahead and, out of surprise, let go of my hand, which I did not hesitate to use and, speeding up to the limit, immediately found myself at the store counter. Looking around the counter with a searching look, choosing the best from the offered assortment and almost about to place an order to the seller, I missed the moment when Naruko hiccuped loudly behind my back, and someone's shadow obscured the sun for me. Well, and who do we have here? A little blonde and a bug-eyed? Didn't your parents tell you that it's bad to enter someone else's territory without permission? A slow and drawling chest voice with playful notes and a well-hidden drop of pleasure from the fright of others, rang out right above my head. And the next moment, someone's hands quickly and strongly wrapped around my neck, so that the next moment they would press the back of my head into something soft and warm. Leave me alone, you dirty pervert. Without paying any attention to her, I continued to calculate in my mind what and how much I need. Little brat, as I see, you have not bothered to learn what respect for elders and rules of etiquette are. Just bothered, that's just for such a perverted old woman like you, they are clearly superfluous, just snorted at her words. I'll have 2 sets of caramel, one with squid and one in apple syrup, please. Parshivets, my neck was squeezed too much. You need to be very polite with Anko's sister, the grip on the neck intensified even more. I will ask without threats, otherwise I will have to take measures, phlegmatically replied to this. What are such measures? Simple. Look at the counter, estimate the quantity of all goods, their price, the possible number of the same goods in stock, remember the last report with an approximate assessment of the welfare of the Uchiha clan, imagine how many zeros in the account of the banks of the country of fire at my disposal. And now the main question is, how many years in a row do you think I will be able to sweep all the dangos clean, every day, from month to month, from year to year? And now compare with your capabilities in the same aspect. Well, how? T's a demon. Terrified at the very thought that she might be left without her beloved and vital dangos for the rest of her life, she jumped away from me a few meters. So, Sasuke, calmly, do not make sudden movements, do not make rash decisions, let's try to negotiate. Come on, I forgive you that you decided to encroach on my dangos, and you will not offend little Anko. Okay, you started it first. How will you pay off? Why are you so angry today? She exclaimed. As if Hatake was given a mentor. Your debt has just increased, I said more forcefully. What, was Hatake really given? Ha ha ha, loser. She immediately burst out laughing. You will be in my lifelong slavery, I promised gloomily and mentally almost added, sexy, but in time I remembered the image of Itachi and drove away heretical thoughts. No, I'm in grief, and she's having fun. Where is justice, eh? Oh, come on, she said, still chuckling. But admit it, you have to be the last loser to get this ever-late mentor. You know, for such news, I'm even ready to give in to you for a whole week in buying dango. My revenge will be terrible. No, I will definitely make a servant out of her. No. Itachi and only Itachi, I will not betray my faith. Ha ha ha, and in response I heard only laughter. Growling, you asked for it yourself, a vindictive smile crept on her face. I buy everything dango. Everything. I told the seller that before that I had endured our performance with Anko, because it was repeated quite often. Hey! It's against the rules. She stopped laughing immediately. Nothing, you'll be patient for one day. Moreover, you already have creases on the side starting to show through. What? Am I fat? Pray to Kami, bug-eyed. She exclaimed and rushed to me, naturally comparing not even genin and already a full-fledged jonin is extremely stupid. Although I was now at the level of a strong chunin, I still have no chance against Anko in a fair fight. But who said anything about honesty? For a moment, the flashing scarlet eyes made it possible to catch the unexpected jonin in the first illusion, which hid the very fact of eye activation, and then easily catch her in the network of many other small illusions, which together gave a stunning effect. Just a few seconds and one snake lover ran away after the phantom in her own mind. What a pity that after a dozen seconds she will realize that this is just a deception and will come back to do one particular person good and justice. And the second time such a trick will not work, but it's a pity. Well, that's it. Let's go back, Naruko. I think Kakashi-sensei will be at the academy soon and it's not good to be late. I turned to Naruko, who was very pale and a little nervous from the long presence of a snake lover nearby. And partly to Sakura, who looked at all this with round eyes of surprise. Well, yes, you don't see this every day. Yes, it is extremely bad to be late. I don't like you, the gray-haired Jonin said after a short silence, during which he managed to look at our faces and evaluate both our appearance and fairly accurate, but nevertheless approximate physical capabilities. After that, he looked down again at the page from the book he was reading, from which he had to tear himself away a dozen seconds earlier due to the fault of 3 not even full-fledged genins. It would be strange if you liked little undeveloped girls and cute boys. Hataki Dano, the only boy in the company of very young teenagers, responded neutrally. But the experienced Jonin missed such an attack in his direction by ear, and it is more likely that he simply did not hear the young man's words, because he was completely immersed in reading. Follow me, he suddenly threw an order, for a moment tearing himself away from the fictional book world and the adventures of the main character in it. Mostly love adventures. Hi. 3 people answered in one voice and hurried after the obviously not in a hurry man, who, during the whole time of walking, never looked at where he was walking, at least in order not to bump into any object, corner or wall. And with such a leisurely pace, their supposed mentor brought the trio of future full-fledged shinobi to the roof of one of the buildings of the Shinobi Academy, where he turned to them not with his back, but with his face and, leaning on the railing behind him, pointed with his eyes to 3 possible places to sit. So, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Hataki Kakashi, A ranks Jonin. I like a little of what, I don't like even less. What do I want? It's a secret. It's all your turn. That's it? A girl with pink hair and a really noticeably large forehead stammered in confusion. You didn't tell us anything except your name and rank. So you will continue as the most dissatisfied. Tell me who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what you want to achieve. Start. Okay, slightly displeased, correcting a strand of long hair that fell over her eyes, she obediently agreed. My name is Sakura Haruno. I love one person, and the look of a fool in love at a guy sitting in the middle of 2 girls, whose gaze at that moment expressed all the sorrow of the world and huge skepticism about the confidence in the presence of a special organ in one person, called the brain, which didn't go unnoticed by everyone except one pink-haired one. I dream. At this moment she again cast a glance at the guy and blushed deeper than before, and the look became too hungry. Pervert, the guy threw looking at Sakura and a little fearfully moved away from her. That's just the girl herself clearly did not notice these words and continued on. And I dream of becoming a very strong kunoichi. Here. I see. Somehow the man stretched out in a dejected way and turned his gaze to 2 more children who did not speak out. Who's next? I. Give it to me. A blonde with 2 ponytails behind her back immediately began to jump on the spot, stretching her arm high. Go ahead, the man waved her off listlessly. Yes, Data B. I'm Naruko Uzumaki. I love ramen and I don't like to wait 5 minutes for it to brew. I also like to train and cook for Sasuke. I still don't like going to the academy and one dango eater. At the last words, the blonde shuddered a little, and listening attentively, although not showing it, Jonin mentally went through the list of all familiar faces for compliance with such a nickname. And when he found it, just like the girl, he shrugged his shoulders, and judging by the eyes, or rather by the fleeting expression of one single visible eye, he was completely in solidarity with the opinion of the blonde. Do I want to? I want to become a Hokage. She immediately exclaimed joyfully and at the top of her voice, not caring that there was at least one person sitting to her left who could have been hit by her acoustic blow. "Blondie," was all the guy grumbled, simultaneously shaking his head, trying to restore the normal sensitivity of his right ear. "I'm next, right?" And a sad look at the ash-haired Jonin. "Yes, you're the last one," he confirmed. "Okay. Call me." "Yes, what a bijou. Everyone knows that already. And if not, then you just need to look at the coat of arms on my back." We skip this point. He immediately shocked the others with his behavior, except for the blonde, for whom such a routine and in general the norm. "What do I want?" "A lot. I want a harem. Or I don't want to." Yes, I don't want to, but if my sister doesn't mind, then I'll start a harem," he continued to say, clearly having fallen into another world. I also want to bang a couple of dozen assholes in the toilet, preferably in one toilet. Well, my main goal is a dream in life of censorship into all the cracks of my older sister, who, such an unfaithful one, cut out my clan and dumped it into the fog for no one knows where and why, and also left a very little of my psyche pathetic crumbs. On the last sentence, the guy's eyes, in which rage was splashing, lit up with a scarlet light and 3 commas appeared in them, which immediately spun with great speed. His body was covered with a heavy dirty blue aura and the world around him began to fill with bloodlust. But suddenly all these effects disappeared without a trace, and the young genin himself became an exemplary indicator of fun and complacency. But actually I really love Itachi Wani-san. I love many more things. And I don't like Baisinen. And lose to one blonde in sparring. In general, I don't like that this ramen lover is stronger than me. Well, I don't like the canon. Stupid Kishimoto with his stupid grass and heavy synthetics. In the end, he began to drive concrete game, resurrected his great-grandfather and merged him in a stupid way about the MILF. The truth is, this rabbit is very nice, I'll tell you. I would not refuse such a rabbit, I would love this rabbit and take care of it. It is not at all clear what he started talking about once again, but once again, blinked in behavior and finished in a normal for himself non-dramatic tone. That's all. And there was a dead silence on the roof of the building. 2 pairs. 1.5 pairs of eyes expressed about the same thought. What was that about the bijou just now? 1 pair of eyes simply radiated an unthinkable hunger, I want ramen. And the last pair of eyes had 2 contradictory emotions in themselves, emotions for each eye, and they were about the following: I'll kill you, sister, and I'll fuck you, Itachi Wani. Tomorrow. Polygon number 7. At 6 in the morning. Don't be late. A test awaits you, the man replied in chopped phrases and disappeared into a whirlwind of leaves, and appearing 200 meters away on one of the many roofs of private houses, he gloomily threw. What is this shit? Hokage Palace. And how do you like your team, Kakashi-kun? Puffing on his pipe, the gray-haired elder asked with sincere interest, the last of the remaining Jonin mentors of this year standing in front of him. This. What a setup this is. For what, Hokage-sama? Why are you punishing me like this? I was a good shinobi. He performed all the missions perfectly, went on vacation, and almost never had affairs, and in general was a wonderful Jonin. So why are you trying to put 3 backbiters on me every year? Well, Kakashi-kun. There's no need to be so hasty. Why didn't you like them? It seems to be a good team. Uchiha is a recognized genius, Minato's daughter is also a very gifted girl, and Haruno, who also has her own talents. Haruno? I don't know, maybe so, but at first glance it is clear that she is mentally unstable. In addition, I have read Yamanak's reports about her initial schizophrenia. I would take Minato-sensei's daughter as a personal student no matter what, if I didn't have a genin team with her in the composition. That's who, so I'm sincerely grateful to you for her. I am too beholden to Minato-sensei to miss such a chance to pay even 100th part of the debt. Besides, I liked her. Resembles Kushina-san in face and character, only the hair from sensei. The problem is Uchiha. Yes, I know that there is no Uchiha in the whole village and no one except me has an implanted Sharingan, and therefore I am the only one who is able to teach how to use it. But he's sick in the head. Even Guy is the height of adequacy in comparison with him. His mood changes too often and too chaotically, and at the mention of Itachi, two opposite emotions collide in him at all. His sister's bloodlust and insane obsession with her. I'm not a Yamanaka, and even if I were from this clan, I still wouldn't be sure that I could not help the guy, but at least keep him in check. You're exaggerating. Undoubtedly, both Sakura Haruno and Sasuke Uchiha have mental problems. And that the first and the second according to experts are quite safe. Moreover, they noticed about Uchiha that he fully understands the fact of his insanity. And he himself found the reasons for all his mental disorders, which he voiced at the next session of psychotherapy. So I think you can do it if you put in a certain amount of effort. This is your team, Kakashi-kun, the old shinobi said with special emphasis on yours, making it clear that the decision was made at all levels and no one will change it. Yes, Hokage-sama, Jonin replied dejectedly, although it is worth admitting that he had hoped for a different outcome from the very beginning. Of course, his future 3 genins shocked him seriously, but nevertheless, a minute after parting with them, a plan for future training, interactions and relationships was being created in his head piece by piece. He was already thinking about how to fix certain problems. How to make them better. Hatake Kakashi accepted the trio as his team. And, of course, the main role in this was played not by an order from above, not by some Uchiha, but by the daughter of his deceased sensei, Naruko Uzumaki. But still, some part of him just demanded to express a portion of his grumbling to the outside world, just like that. Because he could. But it still looks like a setup, and this is a setup, Kakashi-kun, the old man smiled kindly, looking into the only shocked eye of Jonin. Or did you think that you could shirk the role of mentor with impunity for 10 years, refusing teams for the most ridiculous reasons? Naive. I've been waiting for this day for 13 long years, when young Naruko will grow up and when you won't be able to refuse. And the composition of the team is my little gift to you. This is my little revenge, the old man continued good-naturedly. And now go, you have things to do. As soon as the doors closed behind Jonin, leaving the Hokage on the other side, the wise man of hundreds of fights, Jonin closed his eyes and, leaning his back against the wall, quietly slid to the floor. For the first time in years, he wanted to break his own promise to his friends and himself by getting drunk to the blue piglets. This is clearly going to be a difficult time for him. Hatake Kakashi was indignant, angry, cursed his fate and the old Hokage, at the same time not forgetting about the last representative of the Uchiha clan in Konoha. But, nevertheless, this did not prevent him from regularly conducting daily trainings smoothly flowing into detailed lectures. And all because he was a great connoisseur of the printed word, the art of writing beautiful colorful stories. He could not imagine his life without another plot, each new day revealing to him its peripeciae and intricacies. There were persistent rumors around him, of course, that his entire interest in fiction was reduced to obscene books by the authorship of the Toad Hermit, but this was far from the case. He read many books besides the world-famous series, Come Come Paradise. However, to say that there was no truth in these rumors is to greatly err against the truth. It's just that the series of these books was one of his favorites, which is why he reread it more than once. There were other books that he read and reread with joy, but who will believe him, and if it does not work out to convince him, then let it be as it is. So, quite recently, literally 3 years ago, new, then unknown author appeared in his field of vision with a book whose title was, About Great Luck. The story is about an unusual man, never a shinobi, but in whose life there were already many adventures through which he passed thanks to his superhuman luck. And most importantly, the world was completely different from their own. There were no elemental countries, shinobi and other things. It had its own distinctive world, with its own history, unusual culture and its own rules. But the most important thing is the main character of the plot. This Mr. Sparrow was an image of how a little bit of luck of one person can affect the whole world around him. And unexpectedly for Hataki-san himself, the story somehow hooked him, and its epilogue openly hinted at an imminent sequel. The second book by the same author was not long in coming, but what was his surprise when a completely different character became the main character of the second part. But at the same time, the book had a lot of references and explanations to the questions that appeared during the reading of the previous part. It was confusing and intriguing. The third book in a year told about two characters at once, about a completely new one and the hero of the first part. Well, after that, Hataki Kakashi, the A-rank jonin and the head of the small Hataki clan, could safely be recorded as ardent fans of Bakugagama-san's creativity. What was his shock when he found out who exactly was the author of his second favorite anthology of books. And after the shock came the true superstitious horror of his words and actions. The creator of this charm was none other than Uchiha Sasuke. And it would be good, even great, because Hataki could get both a personal autograph and a new book a couple of days before its official appearance on the shelves of bookstores. It was only on the day when he was supposed to conduct a cohesion test for his new genin team that the fatal words sounded. Either he begins to teach them diligently, or Uchiha threatened not only to tell all the subsequent plots of ready-made but unreleased books, and there were already 5 of them, but also to kill the main characters of the series, while slowly and colorfully painting their deaths. An avid connoisseur of art books could not withstand such a blow, and therefore quickly capitulated when he realized that the words spoken were not a joke at all. So he had to not sleep at night, but to learn from books and to pry from his companions with friends about how it is in general to teach a team of genins. After all, if he learns badly, then the more terrible he will hear from the Uchiha. A demon, he's just a demon, not a future shinobi. How does only the earth carry such people? I was happy. Finally, I have an experienced, knowledgeable and able mentor. Well, the fact that he had to be blackmailed a little. So who was to blame that he was so uncooperative at first? You can't be such a lazy person, you need to pass on your life experience to the younger generations. From hand to hand, so to speak. And in general, he should be grateful to me, because if it wasn't for me, he would have been mowing under an amoeba for at least 3 more years. And so I helped him find his vocation in a socially useful cause. Who else, if not him, will qualitatively train the 3 future killers of their neighbors, middle and far? Maybe I also want to be able to kill a person in 100 different ways with a dango wand, like Anko. She refused to teach me this skill herself, but I found a replacement for her. My quiet joy was a little blackened by the fact that even despite my future rapid progress as a shinobi, I still can't overtake Naruko. This blonde did the impossible, she channeled her unbridled and unstoppable energy into training. She was incredibly persistent before that, which, combined with her stamina, did not leave me many chances before. And now it's like she's got a second reactor. My grandfather Madara, I'm already scared. But this is just the beginning. Another unexpected and almost incredible fact was that in my eyes one pink-haired acoustic installation of mass destruction is still not as fast as it seemed to me all this time. It turns out that if you put an evil sergeant over her head, she becomes an unexpectedly useful acquisition. Well, kunai brings, waves a towel when tired. Joke. Well, almost. The main thing is that she stopped tearing my eardrums, because she has no strength after training for anything. No, you don't think that I'm biased against Sakura or don't like her as a person, she just hasn't let me pass for 5 years. Like a sheet of paper, it stuck to me from the very moment of my admission to the academy, to this day. She really won't let me through. In general, I'm just tired of her, Sasuke-kun. Therefore, I was glad of the changes in her. She became a little calmer, stopped reacting so sharply to the presence of Naruko in dangerous proximity near me and so on. In the meantime, I'm just sitting and trying not to fall asleep, while my other 2 teammates with their eyes burning with excitement are trying to catch one black devil cat. I won't bother them, besides, it's very funny to watch their offended faces when the cunning beast once again left them with a nose. And Thora herself had a lot of fun playing with these 2. She, of course, approached me a couple of times, but never waiting for at least some reaction from me, she walked away like an offended innocence. What can I do if I'm a little smarter than other Philistines and I just get into working as a buffoon for this animal? And a spray can full of valerian has absolutely nothing to do with it. Okay, the sun is already setting and we have almost no time left for games, I informed reality of my intentions. Come here, stupid cat. PSHSHSHSH, and began to spray the infernal liquid around the place where several pieces of juicy meat lay on the ground, into which I had previously injected sleeping pills. I didn't have to wait long, the hellcat appeared a couple of minutes later. Her keen sense of smell played a cruel joke on her, her instincts took over her and led her body to the source of such an alluring smell. And at that time, I was looking at this weak-willed creature with a wide grin, who, noticing me and my pose, suspected something was wrong, only the mind could not get the upper hand over the body and she was systematically approaching the trap prepared for her. It was very interesting to watch the inner struggle of the mind and the animal part of this cat. When the mind screamed, "No! It's a trap," her body stubbornly repeated, "Mrr. Purr, meow, mrr." And with each step, the despair in her eyes grew exponentially. And I remembered how not to go. In the end, the resistance of common sense was broken and the black flexible body enthusiastically bit into the pieces of meat in front of him, so that 10 seconds later, giving out an offended meow, he fell unconscious. And yes, I think I found out from whom Taicho learned to convey his emotions so well with just one glance. I wonder if Tora gives private lessons? And how many servings of valerian does she take in one lesson? 2-1, stupid cat. You can't compete with the greatness of human genius. I recited pathetically over the body of the defeated enemy of hundreds of genins. First to the base, the target is neutralized. The base is the first, great job. Having received my part of the praise from Taicho, I moved forward in search of 2 girls who could not fulfill their part of the plan to capture the formidable beast that was now sleeping peacefully in my arms. Apparently, a long search was not envisaged not only in my plans, but also in theirs. Slowly towards me, with very gloomy and scratched faces and not only, in slightly dirty and rumpled clothes, 2 victims of animal arbitrariness came out. And when they saw their failed victim on my hands, their eyes flashed with a kind of dark triumph, and grins appeared on their faces equally anticipating sweet revenge. That's just not where it was. I will not offend the shawarma, I briefly threw at their attempts to take over my burden. But, Sasuke-nii/Sasuke-kun. These 2 were offended and indignant, believing that I oppressed them in my right to take holy revenge. Learn to accept defeats with pride. Or just don't let yourself be defeated. Especially for some cat, I sneered and, under the offended snuffling from both sides, went on. It was necessary to hand over the mission object into the hands of the customer. And, probably, only the understanding of the fact who exactly is the owner of the cat, did not allow me to catch the last one in the very first minutes. giving the opportunity to throw off the stress of guardianship from such a woman. I almost feel sorry for the poor animal. But no, it seemed, glory to the sage. Or should I say, glory to Grandpa. But I can't call Rabbit-chan a grandmother. This MILF-san has taken a special place in my heart and in my plans. Can Akatsuki help? Their goal seems to be noble, but I'm more concerned about the side effects in the form of the resurrection of ancient Nayashiki. Yes, One-san, you've made me even more crazy than I thought I was before. Or is it just my cockroaches mutating? Sasuke-san, are you thinking about something? Kakashi-san, who came up from the side, asked me. Yes, I nodded. About what exactly, if not a secret? He asked with a hint of interest. About the same thing as always, how to take over the world. I answered with enthusiasm, thereby putting my mentor in a short stupor. A good joke, he replied, smiling with his eyes. That's how it always is, you tell the truth, but no one believes you. On the other hand, I was able to decide that the Akatsuki would still remain without my help. Of course, I'm a Pokemon fan, but the Pokemon here are the wrong Pokemon, and I don't have the right Pokeball to capture them. Besides, I don't like zoo. I have, so to speak, my own special tastes in Pokemon. Catch them all. No, yes, we can't, yes, we can, everything is within the mission, but it's somehow, oh, yes, keep your conjectures to yourself. But still, they don't do that to reasonable people. The answer to the argument sounded very uncertain a second earlier. Reasonable? People? This is an ordinary drunk, it's not just possible, but necessary to do this with them. The dismissive snort perfectly illustrated the depth of the author of these words' attitude to the root of all his current problems. I still feel uneasy about this. These words were said timidly and already with a huge degree of doubt. What will he do? We'll cut it down, seal it in a scroll and go to the mission goal like normal shinobi. This argument has been going on for the last 10 minutes, just from the moment we left the Konoha gate. I acted as a tyrant, a usurper, a tyrant and in general a world evil that wants to surrender to its laziness and make its life a little easier. In the role of an honest, kind and generally the most conscientious conscience in all universes, Naruko. And she did this thankless thing not because she felt sorry for the animal in the face of an old alcoholic, but purely because if I don't limit myself now in a small way, then it will be much worse for everyone at once. She knows, she has already somehow stepped on such a rake. And most importantly, without any smell of fumes and cheap sake, I laid out my last argument in front of the unwitting defender of the poor and oppressed, as well as the audience, who watched our little fuss with great interest. Besides, it will be much safer for our esteemed employer than to go as it is now. Odorless? Oh, yes. I almost could. Still, sometimes it's bad when someone close to you has an acute sense of smell, so not getting burned with going to the left becomes truly mission impossible, but in rare moments it's a real blessing. Yeah, completely without it. I answered honestly and sincerely, mentally praying to the rabbit goddess or simply the divine MILF, so that my tone would not convey all that storm of emotions that at that moment covered me with my head. In the next moment, 3 events happened. Naruko blurred into orange lightning, appearing a moment later behind the back of an alcoholic, a bridge builder, pale as marble, and our employer in one person, who perfectly heard all our remarks, with his hand raised to strike, and the employer disappeared with a slight flash of smoke. I hate drunks, the blonde muttered, wrinkling her nose, putting a small but wide scroll covered with a string of incomprehensible black symbols on her belt. In response, a synchronous sigh came from the remaining indifferent spectators. They have already managed to get used to all sorts of unexpected and delusional actions. Our Taicho and at the same time the only high-ranking jonin only cast a lazy glance at us with his only visible eye and turned the next page of his book. He was obviously much more interested in what was happening there, on paper pages among the lines of black hieroglyphs. But a very stubborn, incomprehensible hints and half-hints, as well as an undoubtedly correct and intelligent girl with pink hair, still could not come to terms with the idea that someone could behave like us until the very end. That is, directly, unleashed, violating many unwritten norms of decency, but not going over the edge, although constantly balancing on it. And therefore, sometimes she still tried to silently beg the world for an answer to her little question, how so? She certainly reminds me of someone. The same stubborn, honoring the words of adults and rules. Of course, 10 balls to Gryffindor. True, for pink hair, it would be necessary to remove 100 balls from this local Granger, but oh well. Although, to be honest, I like Slytherin more, there is also such a Nyashka as Greengrass. I wonder if she has soft thighs. Can they be used as an eternal pillow? So, something has taken me to the wrong fandom again. I always forget about where I am, and even these voices in my head are always inciting me to repeat the feat of one san. I'm kidding, that's not really what they're saying. Well done, Naruko. You saved us. Coming up and lightly touching her cheek with my lips, I said, causing 3 different reactions by my actions: indignation, contentment and embarrassment. And, well, yes, there is also Sakura's keen desire to be in Blondie's place, but before that, to bury her cold body deep in the forests of the Land of Fire. Now we can quickly and without unnecessary hassle get to the city we need in the Land of Water, Taicho? It seems that I made a strong enough emphasis on the fact that I am offering this only because the situation forced me to. And I can't give one lazy creature a chance to get away with it. So why does she have such a red and dreamy expression on her face? TC, I don't understand anything. Tsung, covering her mouth with her hand, Naruko muttered something to herself with cheerful sparks in her eyes. And? I agree. Yes. She immediately seized on my offer with her hands, feet, and even teeth. Sasuke, let me carry her, I'm still very hardy and, no. Sakura and I exclaimed in panic in one voice, thereby interrupting Naruko. I understood why the pink-haired one exclaimed, but I just didn't want Naruko to trample my pride into the ground once again. Well, no, I'll carry Sakura, period. Still, I'm a man here, well, also Kakashi, but he doesn't have the status, and most likely he will get rid of such an offer. And the very next minute we were racing along the upper tiers of giant trees, with which the forests of the Land of Fire teemed. Jumping from one branch to another a dozen meters ahead with effortless ease at a huge speed even for an experienced genin or a weak chunin. And everything would be fine if it weren't for the too hot and frequent breathing in my ear from someone on my back. For some reason, it made me very nervous. I wanted to run away, hide as far away from it as possible. Yes, if Orochimaru appeared in front of me now, and I would gladly give her both body and soul in every sense, just to get away from this vile action. That's how, in invisible tension, I spent the next 10 hours, which, in total, was equal to 3-day crossings of an ordinary caravan. Until the kami heard me and still did not give me relief, albeit in a very peculiar way. After the third halt, literally 10 minutes later, when there was only nothing left to the border with the country of water, an attack occurred. I managed to react at the very last moment, by a hair's breadth away from the metal chain stretched like a string on my way. She appeared out of nowhere right in the middle of my next jump. And only thanks to the natural dexterity and great visual and muscular reaction characteristic of all members of the Uchiha clan, I was able to change the position of my body and adjust the trajectory of my jump with the release of raw chakra so as to pass from below an unexpected obstacle. The enemy! I managed to shout, instantly activating the Sharingan with the 2 tomos that were the limit for me, before a blow flew into my side from my blind spot, which threw me back against the nearest tree. I didn't have time to change my position, and, not understanding anything yet, Sakura took all the damage from the blow, releasing her grip and releasing me, at the same time as her body fell on the lower branch, hitting her also, and disappeared into the bushes on the ground. I hope nothing serious happened to her, Naruko. To me. I gave her an order, having printed a log with her seal from Kawarimi next to me, and with a quick glance I walked through the trees surrounding me, looking for where an enemy unknown to me could hide. And I found, Sharingan sees and analyzes everything. Naruko appeared next to me without any special effects, except that only the log was gone. Even before she could focus her gaze on me and even realize where she appeared, I grabbed her by the waist and jumped to the upper branches of the trees. And in the place where I was standing, a dozen kunai crashed with a coil of explosive seals, and immediately a deafening explosion sounded. Clones, fishing line, explosion. We drive them in and blow them up, he said in her ear while we were in the jump. Hi, she answered seriously, and even before my feet touched a solid support, she pushed off from my body and jumped into a completely different place. My eyes perfectly saw the silhouettes of the attackers, and I transmitted what I see with the help of genjutsu directly to Naruko's brain. We acted synchronously, coordinating our actions with each other with the interval that was necessary for my chakra to overcome the distance between us. That is, none of the shinobi below the rank of Kage and Sanins would hardly be able to identify this hitch. We have honed this technique, if not to the ideal, then very close. And the very idea of this technique was born out of thoughts about pain and his bodies. In particular, about how you can realize the ability to see through each other's eyes, because as practice has shown, this is very effective against both one and many shinobi. We moved chaotically in the view of an outsider. But in fact, we braided all the free spaces available to us with a fishing line made of chakra-productive metal, so thin that it was very difficult to notice it. I specially took it out of the reserves of my clan. Only a Sharingan or a very experienced I could notice it even in a state of rest, not to mention a fight. Especially about the fight in the dark forest. It is not surprising that after several injuries, the attackers redoubled their vigilance, realizing that we are far from an ordinary couple of genins. And it helped them to some extent. But in the end it was in vain. We did not engage in direct combat. We were constantly moving with the help of moving techniques or just quick jumps from place to place paired with fast running along tree trunks. We did everything to create a false sense of superiority among our enemies. To show that all we can do is rarely bite and run away. But in fact we were taking them to the same place. To where Naruko, with one touch of her hand, created many explosive seals wherever she could. And when we lured them there, it sounded only cats. Grinning, she folded the seal of Naruko's concentration. And the bodies of the two shinobi were drowned in a huge cloud of fire and wood chips. This is not some kind of mediocre genin seal, this is the creation of Uzumaki and Jinchuriki Kubi. Her chakra is much denser, richer, better and heavier than 80% of the shinobi of the whole world. In the explosion created by her, even an average jonin with the main element of Doton would not survive. What can we say about two watermen from the fog? Yes, they are strong chunins, but they should not go against us. Taicho, you could have helped, I threw into the air. Well, you did a great job yourself. I decided not to interfere, throwing off some kind of disguise technique. He appeared lying on one of the lowest and widest branches of the tree, holding an unconscious Sakura next to him. But I would definitely intervene if I saw that you couldn't cope on your own. Putting the book aside, he said seriously, looking at us, and I believed him in this. Whatever he is in everyday life, but in battle he is completely different. As you say, Taicho. And yes, it seems to me, or do we need to ask our employer about something? I asked ironically, looking at the same time at how barely alive Chunin Kiri crawls out from under his dead comrade. And here he is, before he dies, pointed to the loser of this day. "Run, Blondie, run!" I shouted at the top of my lungs to the carrier of the eternal chakra generator, who caught up with me in the sprint. And I should note that she reduced the initial gap between us with phenomenal speed. Whether it was because of her trained body or a huge and extremely sharp metal sleeper, mistakenly called one of the 7 legendary swords of the mist, in the hands of our pursuer. But for the first time that she and I show such a high rhythm of movements. According to my personal observations, we have just passed the speed limit of a 2-year-old chunin. There was just one problem, no, even two. The first is my endurance, which leaves much to be desired compared to one incarnation of the perpetual motion machine in this universe, so this is further aggravated by the wound I received earlier in the thigh. Slava, Kami, the crazy kunai didn't touch a single artery. Otherwise, he would have bled to death. The second problem was one very evil tiger shark cosplayer, or maybe he is so evil because the cosplay failed. Well, there are not 3 rows of teeth, but 1, there are gills, but there are no scales, there are no fins. So he's freaking out. I give a tooth. Zabuzu Hoshigake did not take into his circle of gill lovers as a child because he was not blue enough. And he didn't have a steep transformation. So the person was offended, now everyone is suffering. In general, this evil man managed to create his no less evil water clones, which now in the amount of 2 pieces purposefully took us away from our captive mentor. The situation was quite simple. As long as we are in sight of the swordsman of the mist and bite him like bees, we live longer than if Naruko and I had run away. After all, if we do this, Zabuza will immediately kill Hataki, but constantly looming near him already, we create a danger for the swordsman in the form of an ephemeral opportunity to free Konakovsky Jonin. So it took a man with stylish gills to constantly monitor our movements, so that, God forbid, we did not destroy all his advantage, earned by pure chance. And so far we have coped with our task. Even if it is very bad. There was really one, but, time, or rather the supply of oxygen in the lungs of our lazy teacher. Let him compensate for this with his chakra for a while, and he had experience in being in such extreme conditions. But I don't think we have more than 5 minutes, and 2 have already passed. It was necessary to act. One gesture, so that Naruko noticed it and we began to implement our plan. Without reducing its speed, it changed the vector of its movement in my direction, while I did the same. No, we did not hope to throw 2 water clones off our feet like that, it was only so that we could meet. In our situation, acting alone is equal to a quick defeat. As soon as the distance between us was reduced to 2 meters, there was a small explosion of thick black smoke. These 2 smoke bombs were activated by my light hand. The radius of the cloud hiding not only visually, but also at the level of the chakra was small, only 5 meters in diameter, but even so, it was more than enough. Dozens of orange-colored shadow clones burst out of the thick smoke, aiming not in 1 or even 2 or 3, but in all directions at once, up, right, left, down. Among this avalanche of identical faces and a nightmare for most sensors, figures of darker tones with a completely recognizable coat of arms on the back were squeezed in. But that was not all. In the hands of each copy there were weapons, kunai, spokes, shurikens, steel threads. In all this diversity, it was impossible to distinguish, unless you are an Uchiha with the ultimate stage of development of clan dojutsu and years of practice in its use. But, in general, it didn't matter if it was real or a copy from the chakra. The wounds were inflicted with the same efficiency, that the first, that the second. It was not possible to ignore a single detail. Naturally, shadow copies were much weaker than their creators and, as a result, were easily destroyed by the apostate of the mist. But this was only to our advantage. A huge number of flashes of white haze served us as an excellent shelter from the eyes of the shinobi, and his sensory abilities were perfectly leveled by a huge variety of shadow clones, which were no different from their creator at the chakra level, except for the amount of the chakra itself. Very soon the situation turned so that the swordsman was already forced to take a defensive position, or more correctly, wait and see. He was waiting for our next step and already roughly saw where we could strike and how to respond to us. But I think he did not expect that we would not exchange for a pinpoint attack, but hit the square, putting both him and the hostage and ourselves at risk, even if at least the first two. Why use a surgical scalpel, which you don't have, if you have a war hammer in your hands? Yes. This is the true meaning of the phrase, between the hammer and the anvil. Blondie, I can't believe I'm saying this, but the situation is forcing. You can print out your tactical reserve, and seeing Naruko's eyes shining with sincere happiness, my back was covered with cold sweat. That's just all I could do, in the name of art. At the same moment, the girl, who braked sharply with her feet on the green grass, took out her huge scroll from behind her back and gave it a huge amount of chakra, even by the standards of the Jonin. The scroll, in response to such actions of its owner, joyfully opened to its full length, enclosing both her and everyone nearby in a huge ring of white parchment. In less than a heartbeat, hundreds of smaller scrolls appeared in a flash of white smoke, which repeated the actions of their older brother. A similar pattern was repeated 3 more times, as a result of which an area of several thousand square meters was completely covered with leaves of explosion seals. High in the sky, in the crowns of huge trees, covering the ground and water, wherever you look, there were these white leaflets everywhere. In the next moment, all I managed to remember was the enemy's eyes widened with awareness and a huge column of flame followed by a rumble of thunder. Everything was consumed by the flames. I didn't worry about myself and Naruko. We are not idiots and we had ways to protect ourselves, even if the effect of our attack was too strong, going beyond even our wildest assumptions. We were safe. But our mentor was supposed to be helped by the river, over which his prison hovered in the air and, by some irony, became another layer of his protection. However, it is not necessary to discard the fact that Momochi was in almost the same conditions as Sensei. The water was nearby, right under him. When the effects of the explosion subsided, a very unusual picture appeared before the eyes of the conscious survivors of the explosion. The ground is littered with small pits from explosions and completely black from burnt grass was spread too far, further than before the mass use of seals. Part of the river just evaporated. And there were 3 people standing in this open area. Tottering and in small burns Shinobi Konoha, as well as it turned out not 1 Nuke fog, but 2. Behind the 6 ice mirrors, from which mere crumbs remained, 2 people were hiding, the swordsman himself and an unknown person dressed in the form of Unin Mist. But the first one was clearly unconscious, and the second was breathing heavily and clutching a wound in his side, where a fragment of his own mirror was sticking out. That's all I had time to see before the fake bounty hunter made his move. Not a single stupid joke escaped from me like, "Congratulations on receiving the title of Alibaba 1 you are." Now explosions in the name of a higher faith caused twice as much damage to non-believers. Kill 10 unbelievers and get a burqa as a gift, in which it is so convenient to discreetly store an additional supply of TNT, or Deidara found his Veifa, or Veifa found him. As a sharp pain pierced the neck, and a long steel needle stuck out in the place of the wound. That was the last thing I saw before my heart stopped pounding and my blood stopped rushing through my veins. The body without a pulse fell to the scorched earth. And remember, when you read this, I will be stubborn because, 1. I haven't slept for 26 hours, 2. I have so much beer and energy in me that it's a kick, 3. I'm pinned on everyone, just any, and yes, I am not responsible for your future moral injuries. Sasuke, come out. The extremely noisy and restless blonde habitually loudly expressed her emotions, while this time, from her light blow on the door, the hinges on those screeched pitifully. You haven't been outside for 3 days. Leave me, stupid blonde, I'm sad. I wonder if my voice was quite filled with sadness and a stingy male tear, or if I need to peel a couple more bulbs for a more heartbreaking effect. It's not serious, Sasuke, came a dissatisfied voice from the other side of the door, and another blow from a gentle girl's palm sent several splinters directly into my forehead. Not seriously? What do you know about frivolity, a little solar disaster, eh? And now I was outraged to the depths of my soul. Is she going to read me a moral about frivolity, this lump of a burning mixture of an eternal nuclear reactor and a violent, and sometimes even more sick fantasy than mine? Outrageous. I won't let it go so easily. Boycott for another 3 days. I said, so, well, if Genin does not go to Hokage, then Hokage goes to Genin. After these words, a terrible thing happened. The barrier between me and the calamity of all Konoha, between my kingdom of debauchery and cookies, and the punishing hand of a girl's heart, between my quiet life and restless life was blown away. Well, how away? Naruko had just phenomenal abilities to throw everything that even in theory can't rush. Well, and I'm almost used to attempts on my extremely dear skin to me personally. You'll pay, I promised menacingly, peering at the blonde's face, clearly confused, but clearly not from the sight of my scarlet eyes. I'm sorry, you'll pay for a new door. That's 3,000 from you. It was my favorite door, at least for the last 3 months. This door was my clear favorite. But last time it was 2,000. It seems that this war maiden was more concerned about the fact that her savings would significantly sink than the fact that she kicked out a reinforced door made of stained oak with a light kick. Again. Last time it was high quality, but not rare wood, but now you have surpassed yourself. Getting out from under the not-so-easy door, I said. Without any buts. They washed down the new door for me, and then make excuses. I'm sorry, Frog-kun, she apologized to her purse, so I didn't deserve an apology, did I? You didn't want to come out. She immediately became a self-defense stance. And anyway, it's my own fault, I've called you so many times. And now I don't want to. Where's my blanket? A blanket always saves from monsters, and this blondie is definitely one of those. Alas, I did not have time to hide with my head. The conceptual protection was not installed, and the terrible monster quickly grabbed me by the collar in one movement, like a pin, sent me straight into the wall opposite the empty doorway. Light. It hurts me, returned the vampire to his den of twilight. I did not call the night watch, return everything as it was. Shutting his eyes about the bright sunlight that hit his eyes through the open window in the corridor. Sasuke, you're behaving strangely, Naruko gave out uncertainly. Well, yes, I'm strange in life, and then once she said it, apparently I gotta level up. Hey, where's my casual gamer, where's my press X to win button? I want to be Marty Sue like someone. And how should I behave after what you did to my pride? You just trampled on my sense of self-importance. But I didn't even do anything, she muttered in confusion, genuinely not understanding what I was talking about. If I were some kind of third-rate protagonist of at least a third-rate product of a gloomy genius from the genus of virgins of the Asian island subspecies, then according to all the canons, at this moment a huge arrow with the inscription "Epic Loser" should have pierced through me, and better 10, so that from different sides. Oh, yes, I live in just such a world. Where's my fourth wall, huh? In general, you are there, on the other side, you throw it to that bastard who creates the plot of my life, a couple of times with your heel and in the balls. Otherwise, it is impossible to deal with such Suyuyu entities. She didn't do anything. Well, of course, nothing. That's quite. So the A-rank mission is nothing, right? And the S-rank Nuke Nin, as well as his A-rank accomplice, is just that, little things, and that's all. The change of the landscape in a single small but proud country also passes under the mere trifles column. Yes, it's just that I was so stupid that I thought such things were something significant, and it turns out that way. I nodded importantly. looking at the confused girl a walking nuclear bomb. But the main thing is not that, but the fact that you did it using the ultimate cheat mode of the Berserker in God mode. And all this without me. The last mlova were just a cry of the soul. I waited until I was knocked out. Please note that they cut me down completely by accident, immediately grabbed 2, actually 1.5, top opponents and merged them into a solo. What's the point in quality if a donator comes with a top down and leaves a raid boss in a Nubiatnik? Now I understand why I'm not a gamer. There are too many cheaters around, but I would already have a Rinnegan from such frequent death screens. I didn't understand anything, the blonde honestly admitted, but I wasn't surprised by this. This is her permanent state. I would be surprised if she understood. I was very surprised. These wonderful conspiracy theories. I suspect that Danzo is special, he is from the KGB. World conspiracies. And gophers. They're everywhere. And I don't remember anything you said. Let's go eat ramen. Well, yes, who's talking about what, and ramen is sacred. After measuring her with a long look, I still admitted that a week of the most terrible depression from the realization that the first, I missed all the fun, the second, at the time of my awakening, a week had already passed since, it's over, the third, the first 2 points are more than enough, in general, a week is too much, give me back my blanket and let's go, he made his terms of surrender. I wonder if that kind uncle from the Department of Psychoanalysis will be happy if I say that I now have one phobia, as well as one more cyclicity? I think so, they are always happy to have interesting cases. In general, the desire to keep a blanket near me is absolutely normal, especially in our cruel world, it is even more normal than my usual desires. And anyway, Grandpa Hiruzen will certainly understand me. I saw that he also has his own conceptual shield from the monsters of the pink world. Probably, he is hiding under it from a particularly terrible monster, the bureaucracy. But yes, what am I talking about? And I remembered about ramen. Let's go, I commanded, taking my greatest protection from the girl's hands and wrapping myself in it so that only the top of my head and eyes were visible. Ramen. That's who you don't need to persuade twice. Looking at the back of the retreating Naruko, or rather to where the object, back, smoothly turns into the object, ass, I caught myself thinking that hormones began to play pranks and the fall into heresy is very close. The first one I should have is 1 san. 1 san. Just 5 strange figures from fingers and from a cloud of smoke opposite me appeared in its magnificent beauty. Itachi 1 san. You wouldn't do that, would you? Bouncing off me, the charming voice of the sister sounded. You know, if someone looks like 1 san, speaks like 1 san, then what difference does it make? Smiled sweetly looking at the female figure taking a step forward. This is a masturbation. Step back, well, the clones must be useful in some way. Besides, if it's a sister, then what's the difference? One more step forward I will resist and yell. Step back, nothing, no one will hear you. Step forward, we don't have a self-assist warning. Step back and someone bumped into the wall behind him and this is not our problem. And in general, if it's a sister, then what difference does it make? The smile became indecently large. And when the victim had nowhere to run, this happened. Sasuke, are you coming? Just for a second I was distracted and with a victorious PFFF, the sister disappeared. Different things happen in life, good, bad, cerebromelin, sisters are murderers, and even I suspect sometimes there are magical girls. Which of the categories should include the statement of Mr. I'll be late even for my own funeral, that winter is near, or rather close, and to be generally super accurate, like Superman, then he's close. We will not specify who he is, the main thing is that he is close. As a result of such unexpected statements, it was decided by us, that is, by me, we go together with Piglet to the big, ahem, again I'm not talking about that. In fact, I decided to tactfully mow down, unless of course a panic run in a circle shouting, "We're all going to die. We are all being fucked," can be taken for tact. It is worth clarifying that when looking at Sakura, I pronounced the second statement with obvious difficulty and skepticism. Maybe it was necessary to add specifics and say that such obscenity would be done to me, as with the most beautiful owner of the Sharingan and in general a pure-blooded Uchiha in Konoha? Sometimes the lack of competition is bad. So, of course, they didn't believe me, and they swore that everything would be fine, and nothing bad could happen. The plan for this event has long been drawn up. To which I reasonably noticed that anything can go wrong according to plan. Besides, they tell the victim of one cunning plan that went completely wrong. Since then, I am who I am. But who will listen to one extremely rare handsome man when he screams about long-tongued pedobirds of indeterminate gender who are hunting for him? One, Naruko, believed me, but she also believes in the great flying ramen god, so she does not console me. After I was tied up in a very cunning way so as not to sow panic ahead of time and explained what was what, the following was said to me personally, "You are Davakin," that is, translating into human, that if at the end of the examination of juvenile murderers I do not fill up the dragon in the face of an unstable 1/10 of me carrier of a one-tailed bijou in the last round, then they will not give me information about my sister, and by the end of all this nonsense they will quickly hide in the root dungeons for enrichment, the gene pool. But I did not get into it, because I knew, first, I will always find a sister. I have my own secret methods of younger brothers. Second, alas, but the root will have to wait for this, someone with a clever tongue will get ahead of them. But everything has a price, and I was bought with a single offer when the flow of pseudo-threats dried up. And it was this holy of holies, a set of Itachi's uniform, which she wore the day before the epic departure into the sunset. What is it about this, many will ask. And the fact that it is not erased. The only non-erased set of those that my sister possessed. In which I went on missions, trained and sweated, and maybe not only sweated. I don't know how, but it was true. I even managed to make sure of the quality of the goods. The smell of Itachi is not to be confused with anything, and most importantly, the smell was fresh, as if my sister took off these clothes only yesterday. I don't know how those who achieved this achieved it, but eternal memory to them, both figuratively and in the future in the literal sense. Only I have the right to have fetishes on my sister. Yes, I sold out like the last whore, but can you blame me? Show me someone who would have acted differently in my place, and I would have beaten him to death with a brick. Better yet, show me those who did what I did, and I would slam each of them with a toothpick. All competitors must die. Itachi belongs only to his little brother, and if an extra little brother shows up somewhere, then I always have a sharpened axe at hand. I'm getting carried away, right? It's all nervous. I can't wait to get the coveted set, and after all, there are underwear. The clones will become even more perfect. Naruko, let's just agree, as soon as I shout, "We're all going to die," then you won't repeat after Sakura and do nothing, but you'll be like me running around in panic with panicked screams, "We're going to die. We will die." Okay? Why? The girl looked at me with some concern. In response, I took the most serious look I was capable of, even more serious as at the moment when Naruko caught me making up the entire list of indecencies, which a decent younger brother must necessarily do with his older sister. A very detailed list, colorful and very long. That is, I have never been so focused and serious in my life. From which even Sakura held her breath, preparing to listen to my every future word as the truth sent down from above. "Because it's green," he said, as he typed it. "I see," the blonde answered no less seriously, holding an expression on her face that even a reference Hyuga would not be ashamed of, and only the third, most useless member of our duo turned into a fish and silently opened her mouth and blinked. Useless Sakura, and I was in love with this man, she whispered, lost. Yes, I gradually destroyed her pink, like her hair, glasses on the worldview. Naive girl, this world is cruel. I am a direct proof of that, and I was once normal, but I had to adapt. Never mind, soon she will be the same too. This world is too cruel to be even a little bit normal here. She'll understand, and yes, Blondie, no cheat modes like pretentious berserk or year mod, okay? It was also important, my ego has just started the rehabilitation procedure, it won't stand another treacherous stab in the back. I don't know what you're talking about, but okay, she nodded, and I felt a little calmer, although I didn't trust her to the end. Who knows these cheaters, what they will come up with in the next moment. I'll give you 100 free coupons for Super Ramen in Ichiraku, this should keep you from cheating. Of course. She exclaimed so loudly that her ears felt a little stuffy, and her pupils took the shape of hearts. Well, now I have become more confident that meat will not run away from me. Seeing Naruko, ramen is sacred to her and she physically cannot go against him. Well, once all the issues are resolved, then you can comfortably wrap yourself in a soft beige blanket again, go home, there will still be nothing more interesting. Hataki-san dumped after receiving some of my drafts, and now he will be unavailable at least until the evening. I honor the agreement, he trains us well, and it's not difficult for me to make shadow clones. A useful thing. Yeah, so the minimum task is to kick off the one-tailed Jinchuriki, the maximum task is to learn the technique of soft body modification, or rather honestly copy that, it will greatly help in the future. Somehow the priorities are incorrectly set. Okay, we'll lower the maximum to the norm, and instead of the last task we'll set. I don't know, we need something epic like me. Then I'll figure it out, there are 3 whole days before the exam. 3 long days. We need to stock up on some seals. I'm an Uchiha, explosions are in my blood, I can't shame the memory of my great-grandfather and not blow up at least half of the forest of death. Yes, preparation is the key to success, there is too much at stake for me to have the right to make a mistake. I need to pray to One-san. She will help, she always helps. Itachi was in her private room at one of the secret Akatsuki bases in the land of rice. According to this room, it was easy to determine who exactly lives in it. Perhaps only one shinobi in Akatsuki had a desire to somehow decorate the environment of his residence, despite the constant moving and missions. However, it is worth noting that it was precisely because of this very desire that the rest of the Akatsuki members were in no hurry to visit her room. What is the reason? Sasuke. Or rather, in hundreds of his photographs decorating the walls. Sasuke is in training, Sasuke is at a party with her, Sasuke is very small and Sasuke is bored at his desk at the Shinobi Academy. Sheets from his diary, selected because of what he wrote in it, where there was a wonderful reminder of the time spent with Sasuke in Konoha, about some things, like a couple of Sasuke's t-shirts, photos from training sessions where he was naked to the waist, a couple of his kunai and various other little things. It was not worth talking about. A special place, behind a stained glass window, also closed by a barrier, rested the pearl of Itachi's collection, her younger brother's underpants. Perhaps it was because of them that no one was in a hurry to enter her room, preferring to knock on the door and patiently wait for the fuss heard from inside to stop, and Itachi, out of breath or sleepy, would come out to meet the guest. Needless to say, in some cases Itachi's mood was below the baseboard if she was distracted from her usual activities and she could try to nail an uninvited guest. That is why they preferred to send to her, if not the Immortals, then the hard to kill. And now Conan was standing in front of the door of this crazy broker and counting the seconds. 1, the creak of the bed, and a barely audible groan. 2, the sound of crumpling fabric, and the slap of a pillow on the floor. 3, a barely audible sigh, and heavy breathing approaching. 4, the noise of curtains being drawn, apparently on a rack with some 2 personal items from Itachi's collection. 5, the door opens, Itachi, with an unusually ruddy face and a very dissatisfied look, met Conan. What is it, Itachi? Pain said that we have a new mission. Our goal is Jinchuriki. Itachi didn't like missions too much, where she had to spend a lot of time searching for and catching her opponents. Preferring a faster solution to all problems, even if it is impossible now. However, accustomed to keeping an icy mask on her face, she still did not express any emotions about the mission. Although she was assigned a very difficult partner, Peekaboo. Itachi, the nasty snake Orochimaru seemed to have set out to get her out of herself by all possible methods. Well, how else to explain her behavior? Those unpleasant hot glances that she throws at her. Eternal compliments to her eyes, "Oh, Itachi, you have such beautiful eyes." And her constantly frightening perverted laughter. And they said that there was only one pervert in their team, Jiraiya. Apparently, they were wrong. The truth is told, in a quiet pool, yes, Orochimaru? Itachi asked calmly, calming the stirred feelings. "I really want your body." Snakes crawled out of the wide sleeves of Orochi's robe, grabbed her tightly, squeezing her in a vice. "Orochimaru," Itachi tilted her head, activating the Sharingan, "you know. I belong to only one person. And it's not you." Mangek's Sharingan will quickly solve the problem of a pervert who covets someone else's. Marino Ibiki, during his time as the head of the investigative department of the village hidden in the foliage, or to simplify Konoha, has seen quite a few very diverse rabble and professionals of all stripes, types, varieties, as well as varying degrees of psychological adequacy. And he had to admit that the young and last Uchiha of the village was one of the 10 most strange and inadequate personalities. And in the top 5 winners for their eccentricity. In fact, he was the second one who not only thought of such an extraordinary act as coming to the Chunin exam wrapped up to the top of his head in a pale beige blanket, but also did a similar trick, and moreover, instead of normal shoes, his feet had homemade, pink, rabbit slippers, with 2 funny long ears on each slipper. It was such a surreal picture that the Kai seal formed by itself several times until Ibika's mind realized that no, it was not an illusion. But not a muscle on the old veteran's face twitched. He's seen shit in his life. In addition, he had seen something similar before, performed by another Uchiha. I wonder if it's in their family? A thought flashed through his mind, at the memory of another genius of the owners of the Sharingan Dojutsu, who at one time, even with this very blanket, entered the arena of the 3rd round of her exam and won the royal battle. Due to the eccentricity of her appearance, she easily immersed her opponents in genjutsu and as a result did not even get a scratch and did not make a single physical blow. It was enchanting and absurd. But apparently, the genes in the last Uchiha turned out to be particularly strong, or his older sister managed to teach him some useful lessons. Alas, Marino could not read minds, although sometimes he really wanted to be able to, and therefore he simply had nowhere to know that genin in the world responding to, "Hey, you," and Sasuke Uchiha simply forgot that today is the day of the beginning of a very important event in the career of every genin and simply overslept. Therefore, when others realized that one member of the 7th team was still missing, and the time for the start of the exam was approaching the critical mark, he was yanked out of bed and delivered to the point of no return by an emergency shunshin. Well, the perception of the world through the eyes of a young red-eyed man played a huge role in the case, for whom the blanket of his older sister was something conceptual and indestructible in terms of protection from any external threats. And as long as it's on him, he'll believe that even Biju can't hurt him. After all, the blanket is an unbreakable protection from monsters. That was the first, but not the last, meeting of one young Siskinchik and the most terrible shinobi Konoha. At the same time, 30 more pairs of eyes of young professional killers of their neighbors stared at all such a pink prince of the Uchiha clan and tried to glue back their cracked universe. But they made the most effort not to think about the pink monkey. Yes, the great battle has not even begun yet, and its victims have already appeared. Their world will never be the same. And only 2 pairs of eyes were different from the others. In the look of the first pair there was pure emotion with the thoughts, pink rabbits, someone very much wanted a similar set of things of legendary rank. The second pair was much more greedy and oozed pure desire for possession, and a combination of concepts such as Uchiha Sasuke and bunny slippers. All mad scientists obsessed with the thirst for immortality are somehow drawn to these two constants. Without them, the whole life of such a scientist does not make sense. Just imagine a terrible laboratory flooded with darkness, rows of shelves on which the subjects chained to them writhe. Moans of agony and insane exultant laughter, and all this with the main character dressed in a blood-stained medical gown, with delicate-colored slippers on his feet and sparkling scarlet eyes. That's it. Without this, a maniac scientist is not a scientist, and certainly not a maniac. Uchiha himself wanted two things, to sleep and to kill. It is not necessary exactly in this sequence, it can be fun to kill in a dream, but let's just say that his older sister managed to take care that her younger brother did not plunge into this path of corruption and vice. By arranging a reality show for Tom, as it should have been. Yes, Big Sister takes care of him, always, so some changes, namely the crowd of intimidated hamsters who moved in a friendly stream towards one audience, he met with some joy. The sooner he finishes, the sooner he will return back to the embrace of the most beloved thing after Itachi, the bed. Here the sheets appeared on the table in front of each of the participants of the first qualifying test. And the questions themselves were rather doubtful, in the sense that it is unlikely that the average genin in the great countries would be able to answer half of them. But the trouble is, Uchiha Sasuke was in no way some kind of gray, average genin, and thanks to the care of his great one-san, his stock of knowledge exceeded another Tokubetsu Jonin. Therefore, the questions for the owner of the Sharingan were more than simple. The whole point was how to answer them, so as not to discredit the name of the best teacher in the world. In the name of Itachi Uchiha, her faithful disciple Uchiha Sasuke has no right to disgrace his sister. In an instant, 3 commas formed in each of the boys' eyes, twisting into a single black ring, so great was the speed of their rotation in orbit around the pupil against the background of the whites and irises of the eyes that turned scarlet. The speed of movement of his fingers with the handle clamped in them was sufficient to blur the contours of the fingertips in the air. It is not surprising that after only 10 seconds there is no blank space left on the sheet. But the boy did not even begin the introduction in response to the first question. "No, it won't work that way," he said irritably and folded 4 series of seals, as a result of which 4 copies were formed around him, and dozens of white paper sheets flew into the air. No sooner had many of the sheets fallen on the table in front of the real red-eyed, as they were all filled with black ink. Uchiha Sasuke, disqualified, after all copies of the brunette disappeared with a quiet, "PFFF," the honed command voice of the head of the interrogators said. "For what?" Uchiha yawned, genuinely perplexed. "For violating the rules. It is strictly forbidden to write off." While doing it so clearly, the senior shinobi satisfied the question, "So I didn't cheat. It would be someone to do it here." "You can check it out," Malik muttered, not seeing the problem. "Yes? And Sharingan and clones were not for copying?" The man raised the brothers very skeptically. "Pfft." He expressed all his contempt for such a poor use of the heritage of his clan. "Certainly not the mediocre and dilettantes around me. Even those chunins among us amaze with the number of errors in their answers. Can you read it?" Uchiha handed a couple of sheets to the main examiner of this stage. Well, the man certainly did not lose anything from this, and therefore he came up and accepted the sheets handed to him, immediately starting to read. He came across the first sheet with the very first question, the catch of which was that it was too general. There was no specifics, and therefore the examiner could either count the answer or not. The whole point boiled down to the fact that there is a group of shinobi ABS in strengthening X, there is a shinobi B, who alone must destroy all targets inside strengthening X. The answer began unusually. Let's say that shinobi is Itachi Uchiha, the ABS group are members of the Uchiha clan, and Fortification X is the Uchiha clan quarter. The beginning was clearly intriguing. That is why the veteran shinobi continued reading further. And then it was even more interesting. The descriptions were so detailed and so diverse and at the same time professional that it was hard to believe that Genin had written them. In his answer there was a list of action patterns of professionals from the members of the ANBU, and at the same time not a single thing was missed, creating a kind of full immersion effect. The answer was just too perfect. And yes, the boy could not write off such a thing from anyone. How? Shinobi asked briefly, and I received a full of admiration and a terrible answer from that. Itachi-one-san is so cool. The eyes of the person who answered were burning with a real fanatical gleam. And she also has a teaching talent. The boy was proud of his sister, really proud. To speak so and with such feelings about the murderer of his own family. At that moment Uchiha Sasuke rose to the podium of the top 3 leaders of the most abnormal shinobi ever met in his life by Jonin Marino Ibiki. After taking one last look at the table with the written sheets, the veteran's gaze caught on the shortest answer to the last 9th question. The question was simple: what would you do if you met an S-rank shinobi hostile to you? And the answer immediately followed: if I met an S-rank shinobi, which would be Uchiha Itachi, then I would do the following actions in any sequence: took, killed, raped. At that moment, the last of the Uchiha from the imaginary 3rd place abruptly rose to 2nd place, ignominiously kicked away, to a position below the previous silver medalist. For Naruko, the whole day could be described with the phrase, full ramen. Everything was complicated, incomprehensible, but new and interesting. The soul inside was trembling with excitement and delight, and the body was shaking with adrenaline, as before tasting a previously unknown type of ramen at the old people in Ichiraku. Everything is so juicy, delicious. Like steamed noodles in pork broth. And their emotions and expressions by others were like a subtle seasoning. Oh, Naruko could compare all the things of the world with ramen for a long time and with taste. Sometimes it seemed to her that her whole life was ramen, or rather the path that it goes through before it appears with the steaming aroma of spices and the alluring glitter of noodles in a plate in front of her excited pug. Sometimes, she even had the thought that she was a ramen, or would become a ramen in the future. And no matter what anyone said, but such a philosophy bore fruit. Yes, there were few of them, but they are more than essential. For example, she looked at the world from a different angle, and therefore many of the concerns of others seemed strange to her. So thanks to such a peculiar way of thinking, she was able to understand and accept Sasuke as her friend Uchiha, although even in her opinion he was a little out of this world. But you can get used to everything, and she got used to it, realizing that Sasuke is just part of that mysterious secret ingredient that makes ramen taste so divine, and she just shouldn't have understood Sasuke. That's all, such is the simple essence. Well, she also acquired a real understanding of life, or so she thought. As a result, many worldly goods became uninteresting to her, except for some things and people like her friend and delicious noodles. Or cooking, yes, that's the last one that mattered the most, well, or at least it was definitely on the second. Naruko passionately dreamed of one day learning how to cook as delicious dishes as in a noodle Ichiraku, but, alas, she has not yet succeeded well enough and steadily, and she has been trying for a very long time. Apparently this was the will of the great ramen god, because it is well known that the longer the path, the sweeter the result at the end. So the young blonde accepted such a burden with the humility of a real Buddha. She will try and she will reach the top, the ideal in cooking noodles. But for now, she should have practiced on something else, not so sacred, such as sushi or scrambled eggs. First miso soup, then Hokage post, and then the divine recipe for miracle ramen. That was her ninja way. Therefore, it was very necessary for her to get the title of Chunin, because where Chunin is, there is a Hokage post very close, almost at hand. What's so difficult about that? It turned out that there was a complicated wagon and a small cart. And the tests were to blame for everything. Since the days of the Shinobi Academy, Naruko had been inflamed with mutual dislike for these creatures of the nine-tailed Biju. Firstly, there was no ramen clause in any of the answer options, which immediately made these useless pieces of paper with scribbles even more useless than they were originally. Secondly, taking into account the first point, the second reason for disliking the tests was the fact that she never scored a sufficiently high or at least average score on them, no matter what answer options she would not combine. Based on the 2 points listed above, we can say that Naruko, who breathed freely after receiving the protector, returned to the past again, to her little hell. The only good thing was that this time the answer could be entered in your own answer without any restrictions. Yes, the blonde admitted, the first impression was deceptive. This test became a ray of light that restored her faith in the Konoha education system. That is why anyone who would look at her test, like one of the chunins from among the observers of the applicants for the title of their rank, would boldly break their brain, for example, about these lines, thinking that this is some kind of complex cipher for their teammates. Imagine that you are a super great ramen, your extra long noodles, it floats freely in a broth of vegetables and meat. Your entire surface slowly, step by step, absorbs the wonderful aroma of spices and swells, increasing in size from the liquid filling the container to the brim, and a freshly beaten egg floats on top of you. You insist exactly as long as it takes for the first strips of noodles to touch the top edge of the bowl, so that the pieces of meat are plastered on all sides. You are ramen. You are serene. You are the ideal. For the first time in her entire life, Uzumaki Naruko answered all the questions of the test as she wanted and saw it. The perfect test. And why are others nervous? Having coped in half the allotted time, she just lay down on the wooden surface in front of her and just rested. The 10th question and the condition that the one who did not pass along with his team would be kicked out without the right to appear on the Chunin exam anymore became a surprise. But Naruko was not worried about this. Firstly, if the question is similar to the previous ones, then she will pass it. She can't be wrong, ramen is never wrong. Secondly, if she answers incorrectly in some probable way, then there is always an exam for Tokubetsu Janina and Janina. In extreme cases, you can just pile on grandpa and immediately become a Hokage. So she didn't worry and calmly continued to lie to herself further. Her friend Vaughn also did not show concern, sleeping peacefully to himself from the first minutes of the test. And since he's asleep, there's certainly no reason to worry. He's the secret ingredient. He knows best. On the appearance of a new actor in the face of a depraved-looking, on the very verge of decency in the opinion of others, a woman who said something there. But as always, trusting her inner feeling, the blonde did anything, but did not listen to her. As a result, she came out of a kind of trance when the secret ingredient pressed dangerously tightly against her. Sometimes his actions fairly embarrassed the girl, because of course, she's not even a novice cook yet, and she's already received so much attention from almost the most important component of the great ramen. He was saying something to her and to those around them, but she did not listen. Only at the end, when her ear caught the phrase, rare components, she consciously looked at the world around her. They were already inside a certain forest with just huge trees. Naruko, this is our chance to stock up on rare supplies. Just think what an amazing taste ramen can acquire if you add such exclusive things to it, such as the meat of local wild boars. But it's an order of magnitude better than the usual ones. There was no need to say anything more. The concepts of rare, better than usual, components, and all the associations associated with them were intertwined in my mind. The plan of action immediately appeared before her eyes, and she was once again convinced that Sasuke was always right. Scrolls with just a huge number of explosive prints have left their covers. Almost everything she had created over the past 5 years, as she learned how to make a powerful explosion, was slowly accumulated and carefully adjusted into storage scrolls. And now it was clear why. All for the sake of the great hunt, muhahaha. Let's do, boom. The young Uchiha's eyes flashed maniacally. What to do about fire and explosions were loved by him equally much. The copies of young genins appearing nearby were supposed to help them mine everything they could and a little more. More than 5 dozen durable ones dismantled one scroll with about 3/10,000 of seals inside. The total number of all seals was in the region of 1.5 million copies. This was enough to mine the territory of the entire Forest of Death at least twice. And this is according to the most minimal and pessimistic calculations, and the originals themselves decided to just run towards the stone tower towering over the entire forest, the point of their final collection and just the only place where nothing will explode within a radius of 100 meters. Very soon the Forest of Death will blow up, and literally. The maximum task will be completed, and it will be just a maximum of explosion and destruction. Great-grandfather will be pleased. That's the end of it.